The diner's neon sign flickered like a heartbeat against the gray Ohio sky, buzzing Mel's Place in a tired, electric hum. Inside, the air smelled of coffee and grease, the kind of place where time seemed to pause, but the world kept spinning. Ethan Caldwell sat in a corner booth, his tailored jacket out of place among the cracked vinyl seats and the hum of a jukebox playing Johnny Cash. He was halfway through a turkey club sandwich, staring out the window at the endless stretch of Route 22, when he noticed her. Lila Harper, her name tag, slightly crooked, moved like a woman carrying the weight of the world. Her auburn hair was pulled into a messy bun, strands escaping like they, too, wanted to break free. She balanced 3 plates of pancakes and a coffee pot, her smile warm but frayed at the edges. Ethan caught her eye as she passed, and something, maybe the way her shoulders slumped or the way she muttered one more hour under her breath, made him pause. "Hey," he called, his voice cutting through the diner's low chatter. "You look like you could use a break. Want half of this?" He nudged his plate forward, the sandwich untouched on one side. Lila stopped, her brow furrowing. "You're offering me your lunch?" Her tone was skeptical, but her eyes lingered on the sandwich, betraying a hunger that wasn't just for food. "Yeah," Ethan said, leaning back with a half-smile. "It's a good sandwich. Seems a shame to let it go to waste." She hesitated, glancing at the counter where her boss, Mel, was wiping down mugs with a rag. Then, with a small laugh that sounded like relief, she slid into the booth across from him. "All right, thanks. It's been a day." She took a bite, her shoulders relaxing for the first time in hours. "I'm Lila, by the way." "Ethan," he said, watching her. "You always this busy?" "Only on days that end in Y," she quipped, her smile flickering like the neon sign outside. "You passing through?" "Something like that." Ethan's gaze drifted to the window again. He wasn't ready to admit he was running from a boardroom in Chicago, from a divorce that left him hollow, from a life that felt like a treadmill set too fast. He was a tech millionaire at 38, with a penthouse and a private jet. But sitting here, in this diner, he felt like a stranger in his own skin. Lila didn't press. She ate quietly, her eyes darting to the clock. "My son, Jamie, gets off the school bus in an hour. Gotta finish my shift and pick him up." Her voice held a mix of pride and exhaustion, the kind only a single parent could carry. "Sounds like you got your hands full," Ethan said, his tone softer now. He noticed the faint lines around her eyes, the kind that came from too many late nights and not enough sleep. "You have no idea." She laughed again, and this time it reached her eyes. "But Jamie's worth it. He's 6, thinks he's going to be an astronaut someday." Ethan chuckled, picturing a kid with Lila's stubborn spark, dreaming of stars. "Sounds like a good kid." "He is." Lila's smile faded slightly. "It's just hard, you know. This place," she gestured around the diner, "it's barely holding on. Mel's talking about closing up if things don't turn around. And I can't lose this job." Ethan's jaw tightened. He knew about businesses failing. His own company had swallowed smaller ones without a second thought. But this was different. This was Lila's lifeline, and the way she said it, like she was bracing for a storm, hit him harder than he expected. Before he could respond, the bell above the door jingled, and a man in a cheap suit stormed in, his voice loud enough to turn heads. "Lila, you got my order ready, or what?" "I ain't got all day." Lila's face tightened, but she stood, wiping her hands on her apron. "Coming, Mr. Grayson." She glanced at Ethan, her expression apologetic. "Duty calls. Thanks for the sandwich." Ethan watched her go, weaving through tables with a grace that didn't match her exhaustion. He didn't know why he cared, why her laugh, her tired eyes, her quiet strength stuck with him. But as he paid his bill and left a tip bigger than the meal, he knew he'd be back. The next day, Ethan found himself at Mel's Place again, his laptop open but untouched. He wasn't here for the coffee, though it was surprisingly decent. He was here for her. Lila was behind the counter, pouring coffee for a trucker, her smile polite but distant. When she saw Ethan, her face brightened, just for a moment. "You're back," she said, sliding a menu his way. "What's the occasion?" "Maybe I like the ambience," Ethan said, gesturing to the faded checkered floor and the jukebox now playing Patsy Cline. Lila snorted. "Sure you do." You look like you belong in a skyscraper, not a place like this. Maybe I'm tired of skyscrapers, he said, and there was a truth in it that surprised him. He ordered a burger, but what he really wanted was to talk to her again. To hear that laugh. As the lunch rush slowed, Lila leaned against the counter, wiping it down. So, what's your deal, Ethan? You don't strike me as the small-town type. He hesitated. How do you explain a life that looks perfect on paper but feels like a house of cards? I run a tech company. Well, ran. Stepped back a bit after things fell apart. He didn't mention the divorce, the nights he couldn't sleep, the way success tasted like ash. Lila nodded, like she understood more than he said. Things fall apart for everyone, don't they? You just keep going. She paused, her hands stilling on the counter. Like me and Jamie. His dad walked away when he was 2. Haven't seen him since. But we're okay. We have to be. Ethan felt a pang, not pity, but something deeper, recognition. He knew what it was to be left behind, even if his scars came from a different kind of loss. You're doing better than okay, he said. Jamie's lucky to have you. She looked at him, really looked, and for a moment, the diner faded away. Thanks, she said softly. That means more than you know. Over the next week, Ethan became a regular. He'd show up at odd hours, always with his laptop, always with an excuse, work, coffee, the best pie in Ohio. But it was Lila he came for. Their conversations were small at first. Her stories about Jamie's obsession with rocket ships, his about the time he got lost in Tokyo. But they grew, like a slow-burning fire, each moment revealing more of who they were. One afternoon, as rain pounded the diner's windows, Lila sat with him during a rare lull. She told him about the diner's troubles, how Mel was behind on rent, how the landlord was threatening to sell the place. It's not just a job, she said, her voice tight. This place is home. The regulars, the noise, even Mel's bad jokes. If it closes, I don't know what I'll do. Ethan listened, his mind racing. He could fix this. One phone call, one check, and the diner could stay open. But something stopped him, pride, maybe, or the fear that Lila would see it as pity. Instead, he said, You'll figure it out. You're tougher than you think. She smiled, but it didn't reach her eyes. Hope you're right. That evening, as Ethan drove back to his motel, his phone buzzed. A text from his CFO, deal's closing soon. Need you in Chicago by Friday. The merger he'd been dodging, the one that could cement his legacy or bury it. He stared at the screen, then at the diner's fading sign in his rearview mirror. For the first time in years, he wasn't sure what he wanted. The next morning, Ethan arrived to find the diner in chaos. Tables were pushed aside, and Lila was on her knees, mopping up water from a burst pipe. Mel was yelling at a plumber on the phone, and the few customers looked ready to bolt. Need a hand? Ethan asked, rolling up his sleeves. Lila looked up, surprised. You don't have to. I want to, he said, grabbing a mop. They worked side by side, the air thick with the smell of damp linoleum. When their hands brushed as they passed a bucket, Ethan felt a jolt, like a circuit coming alive. Lila's cheeks flushed, and she looked away, but not before he saw the spark in her eyes. By noon, the pipe was fixed, but the damage was done. Mel sat at the counter, head in his hands. This might be it, he said. Can't afford another hit like this. Lila's face fell, and Ethan saw the fear in her eyes, not just for her job, but for the life she'd built. He wanted to tell her it would be okay, that he could help, but the words stuck in his throat. Instead, he reached for her hand, just for a second, and squeezed. We'll find a way, he said. She nodded, her eyes meeting his, and in that moment, something shifted. It wasn't just about the diner anymore. It was about them. The diner smelled of damp wood and desperation, the kind that clung to the air after the plumber had left and the last customer had fled. Lila stood near the counter, her apron still damp from the burst pipe, her eyes fixed on the floor as if she could will the mess away. Ethan, sleeves rolled up, leaned against the booth, watching her. He'd never seen someone carry so much and make it look so effortless, but the cracks were showing now. Her hands trembled slightly as she wrung out a rag. Before he could say anything, the bell above the door jingled, sharp and out of place in the quiet. A man in a crisp gray suit stepped inside, his polished shoes clicking against the linoleum. He was tall, with a slick smile that didn't reach his eyes, and he carried a leather folder under one arm. The air shifted like a storm rolling in. "Lila Harper?" the man asked, his voice smooth as glass. Lila's head snapped up, her expression tightening. "That's me. Who are you?" "Name's Carter," he said, extending a hand she didn't take. "I represent Horizon Properties. We own the building." He glanced around the diner, his lip curling slightly at the water stains. "Heard about your situation. I'm here to talk options." Ethan's stomach twisted. He knew men like Carter, sharks in suits, circling for a deal. He stepped closer to Lila, his voice low. "What kind of options?" Carter's eyes flicked to Ethan, sizing him up. "And you are?" "A friend," Ethan said, his tone sharper than he intended. Lila shot him a glance, half grateful, half wary. Carter shrugged, unfazed. "Well, friend, the situation's simple. Mel's behind on rent. Way behind. With this," he gestured at the soggy floor, "it's not looking good. Horizon's ready to sell the place unless someone steps up with a plan. Fast." Lila's face paled. "Sell? But Mel's been here 20 years. This place is business." Carter cut in, his smile unwavering. "Nothing personal, but I've got a buyer lined up. Unless you've got, say, 50 grand to cover the back rent and repairs, I'd start looking for a new job." Lila's hands clenched into fists, and Ethan saw the fight in her eyes, the same fire he'd seen when she talked about her son, Jamie. "We'll figure it out," she said, her voice steady despite the tremor in her hands. "We always do." Carter raised an eyebrow, clearly unconvinced. "You've got 2 weeks. After that, we move forward." He slid a business card across the counter and walked out, leaving the bells jingle to echo in the silence. Lila sank onto a stool, her shoulders slumping. 2 weeks, she whispered. "I can't lose this place, Ethan. It's not just a job. It's where Jamie does his homework in the back booth. Where Mel taught me to make pie crust when I was 18. It's home." Ethan wanted to fix it. Right then, with a check, a phone call, anything. His bank account could swallow 50 grand without a blink. But the way Lila's jaw set, the way she stared at Carter's card like it was a snake, told him she wouldn't take a handout. Not from him. Not from anyone. Instead, he pulled up a stool beside her. "What if we came up with a plan? Something to keep this place open?" She looked at him, skeptical but curious. "Like what? A bake sale? We're not exactly swimming in customers." He grinned, the kind of grin that had closed million-dollar deals. "Bigger than a bake sale. What if we threw a fundraiser? Get the town involved. Show Horizon this place is worth saving." Lila's brow furrowed. "You think people would show up? This town's not exactly rolling in cash either." "They'll show up for you," Ethan said, and he meant it. He'd seen how the regulars lit up when Lila poured their coffee, how she remembered their orders, their stories. "You're the heart of this place." Her cheeks flushed, and she looked away, tucking a strand of hair behind her ear. "Your trouble, you know that? Showing up with your big ideas, making me think this could actually work." "Trouble's my middle name," he said, winking. "Come on, let's do this." Over the next few days, the diner transformed into a war room. Lila rallied the regulars. Old Mr. Thompson, who came for pie every Tuesday, Jenny the librarian, who tipped in quarters, even grumpy Mr. Grayson, who grumbled but promised to spread the word. Ethan, meanwhile, tapped into skills he hadn't used since his startup days: strategy, logistics, charm. He designed flyers on his laptop, called local businesses for donations, even sweet-talked the radio station into a free ad. Working together, he and Lila fell into an easy rhythm. She'd tease him when he fumbled with the coffee machine. He'd make her laugh with stories of his disastrous attempts at cooking. One evening, as they sorted donated raffle prizes, gift cards, a quilt from Jenny's knitting group, a free oil change from the garage, Lila paused, her hand stilling on a stack of flyers. "Why are you doing this?" she asked, her voice quiet. "You could be anywhere. Chicago, New York. Why stay here, mopping floors and begging for raffle tickets?" Ethan leaned against the counter, his usual quick answer nowhere to be found. He thought of his empty penthouse, the endless meetings, the divorce papers he'd signed without a fight. "Because it feels real," he said finally. "You, Jamie, this place, it's not just numbers on a spreadsheet. It matters. Lila's eyes softened, and for a moment, the air between them felt charged, like the moment before a storm breaks. She reached out, her hand brushing his arm, and said, "Thank you, Ethan, for seeing us." He wanted to say more, to tell her how her laugh had become the best part of his day, how he hadn't felt this alive in years. But before he could, Jamie burst through the door, his backpack bouncing, his voice a mile a minute. "Mom, I drew a rocket for the fundraiser. Can we put on the poster?" Lila's face lit up, and she pulled Jamie into a hug. "Let's see it, kiddo." She glanced at Ethan, her smile warm but guarded, and he knew, whatever was growing between them, it wasn't simple. Not with her son, her life, her walls. Not with his past, his doubts, his world waiting in Chicago. The fundraiser was set for Saturday, and by Friday night, the diner buzzed with anticipation. Volunteers strung fairy lights across the ceiling, and the jukebox played a loop of feel-good classics. Ethan and Lila stayed late, arranging tables, their shoulders brushing as they moved. When she laughed at his attempt to tie a balloon, he caught her hand, just for a second, and her breath hitched. "You're not half bad at this," she said, her voice teasing but soft. "You're not so bad yourself," he replied, and the way she looked at him, open, unguarded, made his chest ache. But the next morning, as the town gathered outside Mel's place, Carter reappeared. He stood at the edge of the crowd, his suit a stark contrast to the flannel and jeans around him. "Nice effort," he called to Lila, his voice carrying over the chatter. "But I've got news. Horizon's buyer? They're offering double what this place is worth. You pull this off, you'll need a miracle to match it." The crowd murmured, and Lila's face fell. Ethan felt a surge of anger, not at Carter, but at himself. He could end this now, could write a check and make Carter disappear. But Lila's pride, her fierce independence, stopped him. She wouldn't want that. Not yet. She squared her shoulders, her voice steady. "Then we'll make a miracle." The fundraiser began, a blur of music, laughter, and hope. Kids ran with balloons, old folks bid on raffle prizes, and the smell of Lila's homemade pies filled the air. Ethan worked the crowd, his charm pulling in donations, but his eyes kept finding Lila. She was everywhere, serving coffee, hugging Jamie, thanking strangers with that smile that undid him. As the sun set, the totals came in. They'd raised $30,000. Impressive, but not enough. Lila stood by the counter, her face a mix of pride and defeat. "We tried," she said, her voice breaking. "That's something, right?" Ethan stepped closer, his hand finding hers. "It's more than something. It's a start." He paused, his heart pounding. "Lila," Before he could finish, Jamie ran up, tugging at Lila's apron. "Mom, look. Mr. Thompson says he'll match whatever we raised." The crowd cheered, and Lila's eyes widened, tears brimming. Ethan pulled her into a hug, her warmth against him like a lifeline. "You did this," he whispered. "You." She looked up at him, her eyes shining, and for a moment, the world was just them. "We did this," she said, and the way she held his gaze felt like a promise. The diner glowed under the fairy lights, the last of the fundraiser's crowd lingering with cups of coffee and slices of Lila's pecan pie. The news of Mr. Thompson's matching donation still hung in the air, a fragile victory that felt like a miracle. Lila stood behind the counter, her apron dusted with flour, her smile brighter than Ethan had ever seen. But as he watched her laugh with Jamie, who was waving a homemade rocket poster, a knot tightened in his chest. His phone buzzed in his pocket, a reminder of the text from his CFO, Chicago. "Tomorrow. Deals on the line." Ethan had stayed too long in this small Ohio town, longer than he'd planned when he first stopped at Mel's place. He'd told himself it was just a break, a detour from the life he'd built. Boardrooms, private jets, a world where feelings were liabilities. But Lila had changed that. Her strength, her warmth, the way she made him feel like he could be more than his mistakes. It was a pull he couldn't shake. Yet Chicago loomed, and with it, the merger that could redefine his company, or end it. He caught Lila's eye as she handed a slice of pie to Jenny the librarian. She tilted her head, her smile softening, and for a moment, he forgot the buzzing phone the ticking clock. But when she walked over, wiping her hands on her apron, her expression shifted, like she sensed the storm brewing in him. "You okay?" she asked, leaning against the counter. "You look like you're a million miles away." "Not a million," he said, forcing a grin. "Just Chicago." He hesitated, then let it spill. "I've got a deal closing. Big one. They need me there tomorrow." Lila's face flickered. Surprise, then something guarded. "Tomorrow? That's soon." She busied herself with a rag, wiping an already clean spot on the counter. "How long you gone for?" "Don't know," he admitted. "Could be a few days. Could be longer." He didn't say the rest. That if the deal went south, he'd be stuck cleaning up the mess for months. That his life in Chicago felt like a suit that didn't fit anymore. That leaving her, even for a day, felt wrong. She nodded, her lips pressed tight. "Well, you got a life to get back to. Can't stay in a diner forever, right?" Her tone was light, but her eyes betrayed her, a mix of hope and fear that mirrored his own. "Lila," he started, but Jamie ran up, clutching a drawing of a spaceship. "Mom, can Ethan come see my rocketbook? It's got Saturn in it." Lila's smile returned, softer now. "Maybe tomorrow, kiddo. Ethan's got a big trip." She ruffled Jamie's hair, but her gaze stayed on Ethan, searching. He wanted to say he'd stay, that he'd find a way to make this work, whatever this was. But the words caught, tangled in the weight of his past. His ex-wife's voice echoed in his head. "You're married to your work, Ethan. Not me." He'd walked away from that, let it crumble without a fight. Could he do that again? Could he walk away from Lila and Jamie? The next morning, Ethan packed his bag at the motel. The neon glow of Mel's place still burned into his mind. He'd stopped by the diner at dawn, hoping to see Lila before he left, but she was already gone, picking up Jamie from a sleepover. Mel handed him a coffee and a slice of pie to go, his gruff voice softer than usual. "You did good here, kid. Don't be a stranger." Ethan drove to the airport, the rental car's radio playing a country song about second chances. His phone buzzed again, another text from his CFO, urgent and clipped. But all he could think about was Lila's laugh, the way her hand had felt in his during the fundraiser, the way she'd looked at him like he was more than a guy passing through. At the airport, he sat at the gate, his boarding pass in hand, staring at the plane that would take him back to Chicago, back to a life that didn't feel like his anymore. He pulled out his phone, opened a text to Lila, and typed, "I'm coming back. Promise." But he didn't send it. Not yet. Instead, he called his CFO. "Delay the meeting," he said, his voice steady. "I need a week." The line crackled with disbelief. "Ethan, this is a 9-figure deal. You can't just—" "I can," he cut in, "and I will. Figure out." He hung up, his heart pounding, and bought a ticket back to Ohio. He wasn't sure what he was doing, but for the first time in years, he felt like he was running toward something, not away. Back at Mel's place, the diner was quieter, the fundraiser's energy replaced by the usual hum of regulars and the jukebox's soft twang. Lila was behind the counter, pouring coffee, but her movements were slower, her smile less certain. Jamie sat in a booth, coloring a new rocket, oblivious to the weight on his mother's shoulders. When Ethan walked in, the bell jingling above him, Lila froze, her eyes widening. "You're back?" she said, her voice caught between hope and confusion. "Took a detour," he said, sliding into a booth. "Chicago can wait." She set the coffee pot down, hard enough to make it clink. "Ethan, you can't just— your deal, your life." "My life's been on hold for years," he said, leaning forward. "I've been running from one thing to the next, thinking that's what I'm supposed to do. But this," he gestured at the diner, at her, at Jamie, "this feels like something worth staying for." Lila's breath hitched, and she crossed her arms, like she was bracing herself. "You don't know what you're saying. I've got Jamie, this place, a million things that don't fit in your world. I can't be someone's second choice again." "You're not," he said, standing to close the distance between them. "Lila, you're the first real thing I've felt in years. You and Jamie, you're not a detour. You're the road I want to be on." Her eyes searched his, and he saw the walls she'd built, the ones that kept her and Jamie safe. But he also saw the crack in them, the part that wanted to believe him. She opened her mouth to speak, But Jamie's voice cut through, bright and oblivious. "Ethan, you're back. Want to see my rocket?" Ethan laughed, the tension breaking. "You bet, buddy." He glanced at Lila, who was fighting a smile, and added, "If your mom's okay with it." Lila shook her head, her smile winning. "You're going to regret this. His rocket obsession is a lot." "I can handle a lot," Ethan said, and the way he held her gaze said he meant more than rockets. Over the next few days, Ethan settled into a rhythm at the diner. He helped with small repairs, taught Jamie how to fold paper airplanes, and shared quiet moments with Lila when the lunch rush slowed. They didn't talk about the future, not directly, but it hung between them, a question neither was ready to answer. One evening, as they closed up, Lila handed him a slice of pie, her fingers brushing his. "You're sticking around," she said, not quite a question. "For now," he said, honest but careful. "Chicago's still there. The deal's still there. But I'm not ready to go back. Not yet." She nodded, her expression unreadable. "Just don't make promises you can't keep, okay? Jamie's already half in love with you. And you." The words slipped out before he could stop them. Lila's cheeks flushed, and she looked away, busying herself with the coffee machine. "Your trouble," Ethan Caldwell. He grinned, stepping closer. "The good kind, I hope." She didn't answer, but the way she leaned toward him, just a fraction, was answer enough. The future wasn't certain. Ethan knew he'd have to face Chicago eventually, to make choices that could pull him away. Lila had her own battles. Jamie's school, the diner's fragile recovery, the fear of trusting someone who might leave. But as they stood in the diner, the jukebox playing a soft melody, Ethan reached for her hand. She didn't pull away. "Let's take it one day at a time," he said, his voice low. Lila squeezed his hand, her smile small but real. One day at a time. Outside, the neon sign flickered, casting a warm glow over Route 22. It wasn't a grand declaration, no sweeping promise of forever. But it was enough, a start, a second chance, a road they'd walk together for now.